And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to the Dolby Io API Platform webinar. I'm very excited to be here. My name is JC, and I will be your host for today. But before we begin, a quick public service announcement. Number one, this presentation will be recorded. So, if you don't want to go down on the permanent record doing something silly, please don't. Number two, we encourage you to submit and ask questions during today's webinar. There is a public chat box at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and drop us a note during the presentation. If we're talking about something you're interested in, go ahead, leave a note there. There will be a Q&A at the end of today's webinar, and we will give you some feedback on your question. If someone else asks a question that you're particularly interested in, go ahead and give that question an upvote by clicking on the heart icon next to the question in the chat. Thanks. And number three, we value feedback. We want to know how we did, whether that's on the content, the delivery, or if you have any ideas about topics that we can cover in future webinars, please let us know. We're going to be sending out a survey after the webinar ends. Please take the time to answer it. We will be greatly appreciative of that. All right, now let's get started. We're here today to talk about three things. The first, and let's be honest, most of you have probably heard of Dolby, but this may be your first time hearing about Dolby Io. But with Dolby, you think about cinema entertainment, great sounding music, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, basically high-end premium audio-visual experiences. But how does that relate to Dolby Io? Do we do the same things, or are they a little bit different? And that's a great question, and we're going to answer that today. The second thing we're here to talk about is how to add voice and video chat to your application using the new Dolby Io UI kits. And spoiler alert, it's pretty easy. And the third, we are going to hear from someone who built their entire product on top of Dolby Io. It's called Tractus, and it's a virtual events and production platform. By the way, we are hosting today's webinar on the Tractus platform, which is powered by Dolby Io. So I encourage you to listen closely to the audio fidelity and look at the video quality and ask yourself if you want this kind of experience inside your application. So we're going to be putting up a quick poll on your screen, asking some feedback about why you're here today. Are you interested in learning more about the Dolby Io platform? Is it more about adding voice and video chat to your product? Or if you want to learn more about Tractus and why they chose to partner with Dolby Io, go ahead, take the next 5-10 seconds and fill that in. Oh, that feels like 5 or 10 seconds. Who are we? My name is JC, and I support product marketing here at the IO platform. And I am joined today by three outstanding individuals. And in order of appearance, John Chang, who heads up solution engineering here at IO, Jason Delancey, who leads developer relations, and Elias Perunin, the founder of Tractus Events, and he will be closing out today's discussion on why he chose to partner with Dolby Io. Just in case they decide to introduce themselves, I'm going to let you know I have two dogs. They happen to bark sometimes. So if they do decide to make a lot of noise, I apologize now. I will do my best to quickly quiet them and return to today's presentation. Thank you for your patience. Why don't you take the next 15-30 seconds and help us learn more about you? We introduced ourselves and our subject matter backgrounds, but please respond to the poll by telling us if you're a product manager, or are you a developer, or perhaps a business manager who is involved in some of these product and software development decisions. Thanks. All right, so a quick recap of the things we're going to talk about today. Number one, we're going to be talking about what Dolby Io is, and then going into some differentiators about Dolby Io, what makes it a little bit different from other CPaaS or maybe Webrtc API platforms. We're going to be doing a demo on how to add voice and video chat to your product. And we're going to be hearing about Tractus and why they decided to partner with Dolby Io, and concluding with a Q&A. So again, if we're talking about something that you're curious about, or maybe we didn't explain it to the best of our abilities, ask a question in the chat. We will be getting to a Q&A at the end of the discussion today to answer your questions. Thanks. All right. So what is Dolby Io? Dolby Io was created to make it easier to access Dolby technologies. Rather than forcing customers to engage in lengthy licensing negotiations that can honestly sometimes take months or years, Dolby Io takes many of these same technologies and makes them available through APIs and SDKs. Think of it as Dolby Io democratizing access to Dolby tech, so any developer or product team can add it to their software. And we have 3 target use cases for the Dolby Io platform. The first is live communications, and that's essentially a CPaaS that lets you easily add voice or video chat to your product. The second use case is streaming, and that's based on Webrtc. And the third, and one that's probably most closely related to our traditional licensing business, is media processing and music mastering. These 3 target use cases have already been recognized by some very large customers. And although Dolby Io is relatively new to the live communications and streaming ecosystem, that hasn't stopped us from demonstrating the value of our product offering and the quality of our service. In the first use case, Dolby Io's live communications offering is really built around 3 core features. That's voice call, video call, and call recording. Now, these features all benefit from decades of sound and signal processing research from our traditional licensing business. And we also support messaging through our long-standing partnership with Stream.io. And combined, these features allow you to easily add any kind of conferencing capability to your product or service so that real-time communications can become a differentiating feature in a larger product, a larger value proposition. And I want to stress that you don't need to push your customers to a third-party video conferencing software like Zoom. You can easily build this kind of functionality into your application, which lets you better manage and control the customer experience, making sure that you're delighting your customers. This kind of CPaaS use case, live communications, are especially relevant in industries like telehealth, where you're connecting doctors with patients, therapists with, and counselors with people that need to talk about the problems that are facing them. Social media is another example. E-learning. Today we're on a virtual events and webinar platform. Live communication features from Dolby Io really power this kind of interactive experience across the web. The second target use case of the Dolby Io platform is live streaming. And I want to divide live streaming into 2 parts. The first part, Rtmp. So Rtmp is a pretty established and mature protocol. It allows you to connect to endpoints like YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, any kind of traditional streaming application or streaming service. The one downside to Rtmp, because it is a little bit older, is the latency that you're going to experience. Sometimes it can take your content between 15 seconds, 1 minute, or even longer to reach your final destination. That's where the acquisition of Millicast by Dolby comes in. Because it's also based on Webrtc, you can live stream at ultra low latency. So you can take content and get it to the other side of the world in less than half a second. And truthfully, we average around 200 millisecond and between 200 and 400 milliseconds of latency, which really makes your experiences that much interactive, that much faster. Now, what kind of use cases benefit from having an ultra low latency distribution solution? And that is listed before you. Things like auctions, where you really need to make sure you're getting the fastest feedback possible from people making bids, or financial news, for an example, where time and delay literally means lost revenue or money. And other use cases like remote production, AR, VR, online events. The more you can reduce latency, the better the end user experience. And Dolby IO's acquisition of Millicast allows us to become a true global CDN, a content delivery network at scale. We can support up to 100,000 viewers within our streams through Millicast. And the third use case, media processing and music mastering. And as I said, this use case may seem most closely related to Dolby's traditional licensing business, but it does move many of those core technologies to the cloud. So let's talk about the first one, our Enhance API. It lets you clean up the audio in any of your media files so it sounds much better. You can pull out, for example, if you are a construction company, if you're recording content on the site, you're going to hear a lot of background noise. But if you put it through our Enhance API, it's going to pull all that out, really focusing in only on the spoken dialogue in the video. The second API, Transcode. This lets you easily convert media files from one format to another. So whether you're doing things for on-demand web and multi-screen distribution, if you need to support high resolution or high frame rates, the Transcode API really does make it easy to convert media files to another format, making sure that the people on the end side of that delivery have the right kind of format to view the content. And third, music mastering. And this is all about empowering creators to deliver release-ready music with nothing but an API call. We partner with SoundCloud. We partner with United Masters. So if you're uploading your music, if you want to master it, typically you would have to hire a mastering engineer, and that can take anywhere between a few hours to 10 to 15, depending on how great you want that music to sound. Our API does that in real time. So if you have a 3-minute or 4-minute music track, you're going to have that music mastered in 3 to 4 minutes. And that is a huge differentiator for Dolby IO, especially compared to other Webrtc, CPaaS, or API platforms. And I want to take a brief moment to talk about compliance. We just went through 3 of the target use cases of the Dolby IO platform, but if you work in an industry with strict data security and governance requirements, you probably still have a couple of questions about Dolby IO. And I want to answer those right now. Dolby IO takes compliance very seriously. All our communications traffic is fully encrypted, and we are HIPAA, SOC 2, and GDPR compliant. If you have questions about these certificates or the way that we treat data privacy in general, please reach out to us. We will be happy to connect you with the relative documents and proof points. Thanks. So now that we've gone through the 3 target use cases that Dolby IO solves for, I want to understand, well, not I, we want to understand which use case is most relevant for your business. We're going to talk you through a quick poll right now. Are you most interested in live communications, that low latency streaming and broadcasting solution, or are you more interested in the media processing and music mastering? Take the next 5 seconds. 5 seconds is about up. And with that, I'm going to turn this conversation over to John Cheng, who's going to walk us through some of the differentiating features of the Dolby IO platform. John, over to you.
So today I would like to put the spotlight on 5 different technologies that differentiate Dolby from other typical providers. The first is sound quality, second, spatial audio, third, the Dolby IO mixer, fourth, scale and speed, and finally, our browser-first approach or mentality. So being Dolby, we put a large emphasis on providing the best sound quality possible for end users. Here's an example of an audio clip from a coffee shop with a ton of background noise from the surroundings. You can see the difference in the spectrograms, but we'll play these audio clips so that you can hear the difference as well. The first is raw audio captured with no filters applied.
Yeah. Oh, it's a double coffee morning this morning for sure. Oh, but hey, at least we're not stuck on the road like our shipping crew.
So again, there's tons of background noise that makes the conversation very difficult to follow. The second clip is the same stream captured, but from the browser with standard filtering.
Hello? Yeah. Oh, it's a double coffee morning this morning for sure. Oh, but hey, at least we're not stuck on the road like our shipping crew.
So that's a little better, but as you can hear, there's still a lot of background noise, which isn't great and distracts from the conversation. The last clip that we have here is the same stream, but over the Dolby Io platform.
Hello? Yeah. Oh, it's a double coffee morning this morning for sure. Oh, but hey, at least we're not stuck on the road like our shipping crew.
So in order to provide this quality, we manage more of the audio experience. We'll capture audio from your microphone, enhance the quality, and deliver it to its destination. A few things that happen in between are AI-powered noise reduction, which means that not only are we performing general noise suppression, but we also remove specific sounds that are typically not filtered, such as barking dogs and keyboard clicks. Second, we use dynamic audio leveling, which will automatically adjust loudness levels in multi-party calls to provide a more natural sounding conversation. We also perform server-side audio mixing to reduce client load in the form of bandwidth and CPU. And we also use our own proprietary codecs and algorithms to fix corruption from bad networks. The next thing I want to talk about is spatial audio. So what is spatial audio? Spatial audio gives you the ability to place sources of sounds in a 3D space around you. Not only can you hear these sources in front, behind, left, or right, but you can also hear them at a distance away from you. So why would you want to use spatial audio? So here I have two use cases where spatial audio can have a big impact on your user experience. The first is traditional video conferencing. If someone on the left side of your screen talks, you'll hear them coming from the left side. And if somebody from the right side of your screen talks, you'll hear it coming from the other. The second use case that we like to see spatial audio in is virtual environments, where you can determine someone's location by the proximity and direction of their voice. So imagine walking around in a virtual environment and you hear someone's voice from behind you. Once you turn around, you can reposition that person's voice in front of you, creating a very real-life experience. The next differentiator I want to talk about today is the Dolby Io mixer. The Dolby Io platform provides a cloud-based video mixer. This mixer allows you to record video conferences, send Rtmp streams out to third-party live streaming services, or send a Webrtc stream to our very own streaming platform. What's great about the Dolby Io mixer is that you have full control over the layout of the streams just by creating a web page. This allows for complex layout logic as well as fast testing and development. The next thing I want to talk about is scale and speed. Our conferences can support either 250 audio-only participants or up to video participants. However, if you have the need for larger scale, you can broadcast the Dolby conference over our streaming platform with an audience size up to 100,000 viewers. Our streaming platform is based on Webrtc, so you can expect speeds less than half a second end-to-end, compared to traditional CDNs that can take anywhere from 15 seconds to minutes for delivery. We also have global data centers placed strategically around the globe for increased speed and stability. And finally, I want to talk about how Dolby builds for the web browser. So at Dolby, we're committed to providing the best experience possible for end users, regardless of the client endpoint. We go beyond piecing together off-the-shelf parts or browser APIs to make nearly all of our native technologies also available on the web. So some examples of this are the Dolby quality sound that I spoke of earlier, spatial audio, and other video features such as virtual backgrounds or video blurring. So now I'd like to send a poll and ask you, what Dolby Io differentiator do you find the most compelling? So with that, I'll pass the presentation over to Jason Delancey, our head of developer relations, to talk to you about how to add voice and video in your apps.
Thank you, John. So what I really wanted to take is an opportunity to basically show you the code and give you a little preview about how some of this stuff works. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a few applications. So here we go. So first, I'm starting in the dashboard. The dashboard's kind of a powerful place to go launch some demos or get more information about the applications that you're creating. But fundamentally, we have security underlining some of these things where you would use your key and secret to generate tokens. We can actually copy one of these tokens from the dashboard. This allows us to get up and running relatively quickly. Next, I want to pop over here. So while we have a web SDK that's very powerful, it allows you to build web applications or with Electron desktop applications that can accomplish a lot of things and give you complete control over the flow. What we've really created is for React developers a UI kit. So this is a toolkit with user interface components to make it really easy. So what you're looking at here is a complete application. Now, in fairness, it is a hello world, so it is kept pretty simple. But what we have here is a button that lets you join a meeting. With that, we can create a session in a conference, and then we have a button to leave the conference as well as see who the participants are. And that's it, right? So that is this entire application. So let me show you what this looks like. Again, as I said, it's a little bit of a hello world, but when you join the session, you can pop up a camera and you get a lot of things like the visual indicator of somebody talking. You can do the self view and have an idea when you have multiple participants, which is great. But from a development point of view, this also lets you see some flexibility in customizing things. So for instance, that participant grid, it said self-view. Maybe I don't want to say self-view. Maybe I actually want it to say the name of the participant. So I can do that and see right away that actually it updates real time, and I'm taking a peek at that. Maybe I want to add another button. So we do have buttons for things, and since I've loaded UIKit, I can start looking at what some of these things are. So like I might want to give the ability to toggle video. With that, I can just add what is a component that encapsulates all of the logic and presentation of what that behavior should be. So if I go and add this button, I see immediately I have it, and now I can turn on and off video. While we can write a lot of JavaScript to customize this experience in every way imaginable using the Web SDK, for someone who's trying to get up and running very quickly, this UI kit becomes very, very powerful, right? It's a Lego bricks which you can use to build a more complicated application. So I'm going to go ahead and quit that one. Give you a sense, what can you do with that? Well, you could build an entire application where you prompt someone to come log in, join a webinar, and here we are again. So I can go ahead and join another application. I'm not playing the audio because of the echo effect, but you have the things that you would expect from a full conferencing standalone application to see who the participants are, to be able to turn on and off video, mute someone, or let the audio and video go through. So this is an example of another full experience where you can use the UI kit to create. In many cases, though, you probably have an idea for the application you want to create or that you already have and are trying to add audio and video to. And with that, like take, for example, let's say you have a telehealth application and you are customizing so that when a patient and a doctor are in a room, if they're writing the after visit summary and they need to call in a specialist or a healthcare proxy or a translator, what you can see here is I've added the same buttons, the same components, so that when someone joins a conference here, and again, it has a very predefined look and feel. We do have themes for this, so that if you want to customize it to your color scheme to make things pop a little bit better, those are the sorts of things you can do. But otherwise, these are Lego bricks. They're puzzle pieces that you can piece together along with your own components to build something very interesting and compelling. And so that is just a little bit of a preview of what the UI kit looks like. And as you can see, it's rather concise with a lot of power behind it. So there are getting started guides available online. You should check it out, and hopefully that helps you get together or get your applications up and running just a little bit faster. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pass it back over to JC.
Thanks, Jason. That looked pretty easy. Well done. I think on the last part of today's presentation, I would like to invite Elias on stage. How you doing today, Elias?
Doing well. How are you doing, JC?
Oh, I'm good. Woke up early. I'm definitely feeling another piece of coffee coming soon. But before I get to that, I would love to learn about your experience working with Dolby IO. Why did you decide to work with us versus someone else?
It's a great question. I was actually looking through our development logs earlier today and realized it was about this time last year that I discovered Dolby IO. Just a little bit of background about our company. We produce virtual and hybrid events. How we got here was we used to be an app for in-person events. Then obviously things happened in 2020 and pivot was the buzzword of the day. And so we built our whole platform and took it online. We actually ended up building out a lot of our own infrastructure. We built out our own streaming infrastructure. We built out our own Webrtc, and we learned that that is a technical nightmare and has nothing to do with our core business of event production. So every moment that we were spending maintaining our own infrastructure was a minute that we couldn't do a tech check with a speaker or help the CEO tighten up their speech to the board of directors. So we started to search for alternatives. We searched for a number of alternatives and test drove a lot of them, some of the major names on the market. And we found that once we got past Hello World, either it didn't support the scenarios we wanted or the technical debt was going to be higher than just maintaining our existing platform. Then one late night, and I know it's a late night because I can't remember exactly how I found Dolby IO. I stumbled across the Dolby IO API and played around with it. And the next day, within 24 hours, I remember calling my wife into the room and saying, look at this. We had taken this webinar area that we're all sitting in right now. We had built, I'd say, about 80% of that code in 24 hours, thanks to the Dolby Communications API. I remember saying to her,
pause you right there for a second.
Yeah.
24 hours, and I mean that's astounding. If that's 80% complete with what we're working with on today, like, did you need to talk to Dolby IO in that process, or were you just looking at our documentation, playing around, and off to the races?
See, I don't want to toot my own horn too much and say I'm an amazing developer and I didn't need any help, but the reason we didn't need to talk to Dolby IO was that it was an easy API to work with. We actually did a lot of the development work on our own. We had the odd question that we sent off to support, but at no time did they have to come on and do a screen share with us or diagnose a problem. We were able to implement the entirety of our webinar area ourselves, either just using the documentation or the odd piece of guidance from the support team. And I emphasize the word guidance. At no time did they need to put their hands on our code. And that's not something that I've seen a lot of in other communication APIs from, say, your competitors. As often it's easy until it's not, or it's powerful, but good luck implementing it. But with Dolby IO, the communications APIs, especially the other one that just came to mind is a lot of the APIs started as mobile and native mobile first, and then were ported in a hasty fashion to web, whereas the Dolby APIs are consistent across desktop native, mobile native, and web native. So that's the one of the punchlines, I guess, is why did we end up going with Dolby even after we did our proof of concept? Well, after we implemented the APIs we actually implemented them in time for one of our big virtual events we had. At the time, it was one of our big virtual events. We've since done, thousands of people, done plenty of load testing. It's a lot of fun. What it allowed us to do is we were able to double our revenue in a year, because now we didn't have to focus on building out our tech. We could focus on enhancing based on the foundations that the Dolby APIs gave us, and we could focus on what is really important. We can now coach the CEO. We can now get the speakers ready. We can now help the exhibitors that tweak and tool their pages so that it's more than just a carbon copy of their social media page on their virtual booth. It allowed us to hit the accelerator on our platform and on our business offering, because we're not like some event companies where we've got, or some event platforms where we've got millions and millions of dollars of VC dollars to spend on foosball tables for everybody. This is a fully bootstrapped venture, so if we get set behind 2 weeks, that's devastating. We have a small team. We have to execute quick, and we have to deliver results for our clients. And long and short of it is that the Dolby platform, just on the implementation side, for us, when we did the calculation of build versus buy, there was no competition. It just made total sense from a business standpoint to build using Dolby Io rather than build using our own infrastructure, using any of the competitors' infrastructure. And I haven't even talked about the audio yet. One of my favorite lines is to say that nobody ever turned off their video, or nobody ever turned off their audio so that their video would come in better. Who's ever done that? Nobody's ever done that. One of the reasons we had a slight delay earlier in trying to play out the 3 samples is just jumping through a couple of, we need to do a couple tweaks on our side so that the Dolby Voice codec, which we're using on this call, wouldn't filter out the noise that the background noise in the voice clips that we were playing. Like, that's how good it was. I mentioned in the chat that we're producing a hybrid event earlier this year. We had a big keynote presentation in a main auditorium. And as we're waiting, we decided to launch the stream a little bit early and just play the audience, the murmur of the audience, the hum of the audience. And again, we had to turn off the audio processing because the voice codec would strip out the audience noise. It stripped out a lot of the background noise and made our in-person presenters sound that much clearer. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities for us. Just the fact that we don't have to focus on building our own infrastructure now. There's also our use of the media APIs. So JC and John talked earlier about the media APIs, and you've got access to Transcode. This has allowed us to automate so much of our workflow. When we're running a virtual trade show and we have a company submit their videos in advance, they submit them in all kinds of formats and all kinds of dimensions. And I'm not sure how they get, 1919 by 1079 video, but I'm not asking questions. What the media APIs allow us to do is get all of those video files in a nice, consistent format, allows us to transcode into a HTTP live streaming, HLS compatible format, get that uploaded to our blob storage right away, and just cuts out hours of effort that we used to have a producer. We used to have our producers sit with the video files and go and transcode them through FFmpeg and then upload them to blob storage and then set up the exhibitor page. Exhibitor can now upload their video, and it automatically gets posted to their page once the video is done transcoding on the Dolby side. In fact, as soon as this webinar is done, the Mixer API is currently taking JC and my faces and mixing it together and producing a lovely MP4. As soon as that's done, it's going to get transcoded, and I'll be able to ship that file over to the Dolby team. The limits to this API really depend. I know this will sound cliche, but it really does depend on your imagination. And that's what's really cool. If you can imagine it, chances are you can build it. And keep in mind that this is coming from a programmer / events producer / business person. I got to wear all these different hats. I don't have the luxury of sitting behind a keyboard for 8 hours a day, especially now that I've got a newborn at home. We have to make decisions fast. We need APIs that are powerful and allow us to prototype and get value to our customers fast. And that's what the Dolby APIs really allow us to do. Once you get past the Hello World demo, it doesn't feel like the training wheels are off. They're there to support you. The support team is fantastic. The documentation is awesome. The documentation down to the function level documentation is more than just one word that you could infer the meaning from reading the function name. Like the documentation is fantastic. It's actually worth a read. And again, the sound, I can't say enough good things about the sound quality. In every virtual experience that we're going to have going forward, I believe if your audio quality is top notch and you can massage the ears of your listeners with silky smooth audio that is free of glitches and has that spatial quality so that you feel like you're in the room with them, that is going to be a huge competitive edge. Every platform.
I think I just need to stop you there.
Yeah.
Like that is probably the best proof point of the quality of our platform. Don't think I could have said it better myself, especially the part around going into the documentation and understanding exactly what the intent was, the purpose behind it, and then being able to follow it to execution. That is very reassuring to hear. We have about 22 minutes left in today's webinar. Elias, I would like to open up the floor to some Q&A. I see that there's been a couple popping in. Why don't we turn over to answer some of these questions? How's that sound to you?
That sounds wonderful. Let's do it.
All right, taking a look here. I think we have the first question of the day. And John, Jace, why don't you join us on screen here, as I'm going to be fielding some of these questions over to you two. Yeah, there we go. How you doing, guys? Does the spatial audio feature have a PA system capability? So you, as a virtual world host, can talk to everyone in the world at once to make an announcement. Is that a John question?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a host, you just join as any other participant and talk inside of the conference. We also do have the ability for you to build a C++ client if you're interested in doing things like media injection.
Got it. Next question. This one's about Millicast. Does it automatically delay each participating signal automatically? So, I lost the question. Whoop. Where did it go? Oh, it got hidden. Oh, well, sorry. Oh, there we go. Does it automatically delay each participating signal automatically so live jamming is possible for live music production?
What we've found so far is that WebRTC or the internet in general is not great for live jamming just because of latency. Even if your latency is 100 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds, it still seems to be tough to get everyone on the same page.
Can I just jump in on that Millicast question for a second?
Absolutely.
So I think there might be a clarification about the purpose of Millicast here. And the way that we use it, just to give an example, that we plan to use it is, Millicast is awesome for if you want to take your Dolby conference, like what we're on right now, and scale that up to beyond, say, a couple of hundred listeners in real time. And that to me seems to be the real use case. You want as close to real time as possible. So like you've got 50,000, 10,000, 5,000 listeners that need to tune in. That seems to be the purpose of Millicast. Have I got that right?
Yes. Yeah, that would be a great way to summarize it. It's like a very low latency broadcast system or platform.
So you do all of your production and collaboration inside of the Dolby Io communication API, and then that mixed conference, that's what goes out to Millicast. Exactly. For the rest of the audience to watch.
Exactly. That's correct.
Thank you, Elias. I think that's a better explanation of how we use Millicast in this use case. Next question coming from Igor. Guys, are you going to release native Dolby tvOS SDK?
On the communication side, we don't have any plans right now. We'd love to talk to you about it if you do have any good ideas. And I believe on the streaming side we do, or the Millicast side we do.
Okay. So next question. This is coming from Robert. Can't wait to see the dynamic audio, video audio stream forwarding based on user virtual word proximity to each other as per your docs. Oh, that's a comment, not a question. My apologies. Question. This one's a question. It actually starts also from Robert. Will Dolby start offering audio processing plugins? I would love to have a reverb echo plugins for the spatial audio with dynamic high roll off.
Yeah, this is definitely something that we're looking into in terms of increasing or enhancing the audio experience. So again, if you have any good ideas, we'd love to talk to you and chat about how we can make this happen.
All right. Next question. Were any bug fixes made to the spatial audio API? I was never able to get it working because of null error in the library, and I am hoping there was a fix.
Jump in on this one. Hey, Robert, we should chat. I know that last year we ran a hackathon, which was an early preview of the spatial audio capabilities. So understanding where you're at today and what problems you're running in, that's something that submitting a support ticket would be a good way for us to follow up with any issues you're having and help you find a good solution.
Thanks, Jason. Next question. Can you talk a little bit more about the mixer's flexibility? I think that one's probably good for John.
Yep. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we give you the ability to customize the layouts within the mixer. So you define what your video mix looks like, or you define what that composite looks like. And the way that you do it is you build a web app just like any other Dolby Io client. You use the SDK inside of that web app, and then you register that URL with us in the dashboard. And moving forward, anytime you use a mixer, we will use your web page. We'll load your web page, and we'll use that to define what that layout looks like.
We've actually, I can add a little bit more detail on as a customer that's used the mixer too, or customize it a little bit. So you can, because it's just a web page, you can have it if you've got your own messaging SDK, and even if you don't, and you're using the notifications SDK, I believe you can. I mean, you can have that layout respond to different events. So the default mixer application, which by the way is available on Dolby IO's GitHub, you can fork that and get started on your own. It lays everybody out in a grid pattern, and then if you do screen share, it puts the primary speaker as a circle at the top left, and the screen share fills the screen. But you can customize that to respond to whatever events you want. We're actually working on a version of that allows us to add lower thirds, subtitles, you name it. Again, because it's a web page, as long as it renders correct on the web page, that's the broadcast layout that you're going to see. So there's no special broadcast skills needed to build those layouts. And again, that's what gets exported. The mixer layout, that's what gets exported to your Rtmp feed if you decide to do Rtmp streaming, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll dictate the layout for recordings, Rtmp, or even to our streaming platform. And again, like I mentioned, because it's just a web page or a web app, it gives you the ability to build really complex logic to determine if you want, for example, different layouts for recording or for Rtmp.
Thanks, Elias, for leaning in on that. Next question from Michael. How simple is it to add a bed of music underneath a one-on-one therapy call?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
How simple is it to add a bed of music underneath a one-on-one therapy call? I'm guessing this is for a telehealth or similar use case, and you're having a call, but you want background sound or music streamed within that call as well to add a therapeutic effect.
Yeah, so today we see media injection done in a few ways. One is you can just play it from the app, so locally. Second is you can use our C++ SDK to inject media, and then other ways we've seen this is using like a virtual microphone. And then finally, I'd say we are looking into easier ways for you to inject content into conferences. So I would just stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and definitely follow up. We'll follow up with everyone today with these questions. So if there's something that was particularly interesting for you, we would love to learn more about the use case and which actual solution would work best for you. Next question coming from Arani. We are producing an event in October and considering using Vimeo Enterprise for a live broadcast. What are the pros and cons of using your service?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest cons of using any broadcast service that's not built on Webrtc like our streaming platform is, it's going to be latency. So anytime you go over a traditional CDN, you're going to end up with, like, for example, if you're using HLS, you're going to end up with at least 13 or 15 seconds of latency. And so if you need immediate feedback, for example, let's say you have a chat box like we have here, and you have a large audience, your viewers are going to be seeing that content 15 seconds into the past, or 15 seconds in the past, and they'll be responding to the presenter 15 seconds late to any content that they're presenting. So again, you have this weird time gap. Another use case is if you have, let's say you want to do a Q&A and you want to have somebody who's like a viewer and you want to bring them into the actual broadcast, that person is going to have to do a time jump into the future of sorts. And so this can be a little bit disorienting for a lot of viewers.
So basically, just to recap what you just said, John, the pros of working with Dolby Io is that we solve the latency equation to make sure that the data gets there in sync with both audio and any kind of text-based use case, correct?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Next question. Can Millicast broadcasting be mixed with a normal or spatial audio conferencing session?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely can do this. So what we do again is we can forward videos from a regular conference to the mixer and then broadcast that single stream over the over Millicast.
All right. This one looks more like a feature request, but please bring back Q sound and add it to the spatial audio feature. Smiley face. So I'm guessing that one's both to you and John and Jason.
Okay, I'll note it.
All right. Any other question, guys? Let's see. Right, Twitch phenomenon. What are the maximum number of people who can join a Dolby Io voice and video chat? So I think, John, you talked about that earlier today, right? What were the figures?
Yes. Today, if you have an audio-only conference, you can have up to 250 participants. And then if you have a video conference, you can have up to 50 participants.
And then from there, with the video participants, because this is a big difference, and this is what made Dolby attractive to us, was the difference between the participants and the listeners, right? So there's the participants, which is what we are right now, all four of us on the call, but then there's everybody that's listening in, correct?
Yeah, so I didn't mention this in my slide earlier because I didn't want to add any confusion, but we also do have a concept of listeners on the Communications API platform. And it's essentially participants inside of a conference that can only receive streams. So we have that ability as well. And on that side, for listeners, we can get up to 5,000 audio listeners and then 3,000 video listeners. And if you want to go beyond those numbers, you can use the mixer and send that stream to Millicast or to the streaming platform, which will get you up to 100,000 viewers.
And that's a big difference between Dolby IO, just again to jump in on this, and other platforms. Is many platforms just have participants, and once you hit that 50 participant limit, that's it. Nobody else can be in. And so then you're having to mix that conference down somehow and stream it out. And again, you get into that delay, especially with HLS. The best you're going to do with that is, I think there's low latency HLS now, but even that's, you're into the 2 to 3 second range. Better, but still. And the other question that just came through the chat is, what is HLS? That is HTTP live streaming. So if you've ever been on like a YouTube live call where you're watching video come in live, that uses HTTP live streaming, HLS. So that's the alternative. That's the traditional alternative where you get into latency. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. It's where you get the Twitch effect, where it's, say 2 or 3 minutes delayed from real time.
Next question. Can I add a mixer to a one-on-one interface so the therapist can choose what bed they want added on recording and upload?
I'm not sure I understand this, but yes, you can choose. Yeah, you can define the layout of your recording using the mixer.
I think if I can jump in on this, I'm just going to jump in on everything. If just to clarify from the asker, when you're talking about a bed, are we talking about I believe there was a question earlier about a bed of music. Is that what we're talking about here? We want to add a bed of music to a one-on-one bed of music. Yes. So if they wanted to have a one-on-one call, okay, and then they want to have that bed of music embedded within that recording, would they do that through the mixer application? Would they do that by adding an extra subscriber in, or an extra participant in the Dolby conference? What would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple options here. If you want the music actually in the conference itself, then that's what we just talked about earlier. Anything played in the conference can also be recorded in the mixer. And then if you just want it in the recording, you can play it directly on the mixer itself. So again, it's just a web app. It's just a web page. So you can just play sounds in your web page and we'll record it.
So if I send a trigger out to my web page and it plays, say, an MP3 file, if my mixer web page plays that MP3 file, that MP3 file would be embedded in the mixer recording?
Yep, exactly. Even if it's not in the conference.
Hello. Okay, that actually opens up a few use cases on my side too.
Elias learned something today. I thought you knew everything about the IO platform.
No, I learned something. So just to take that a step further, anything that the mixer application plays, you can think of as you're just doing audio and video capture of that mixer application. So anything that browser would play out, Dolby IO or otherwise, would be captured as part of that video capture?
Exactly. We'll just load your web page and we'll record whatever is happening inside of that instance.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Okay. Next question. We are looking at having 100,000 plus viewers of the show across the US from the veteran community. Is that level supported?
With the streaming platform, yes, we can have up to 100,000 viewers.
Now, let me make your life complicated. What if I wanted to do, say, 200,000 or 300,000? Because now we're talking about, we're getting to big scale here, and I imagine there might be a little bit of custom work involved. Could I do something like take an Rtmp? Could I restream it somehow?
Yeah, you could potentially send an Rtmp stream to the streaming platform, and then also start a Webrtc stream to the streaming platform. And I'm not sure if it'll end up with 2 different streams. I think it does end up with 2 different streams on the streaming platform, Or if you're using some broadcast studio or some like broadcast equipment, you could also just send multiple streams to the streaming platform.
Because one idea I can think of on the production side would be you could reserve that real time for, one tier of your listeners, and then you could have that restreamed out to, a bigger service where you might be okay with a little bit more latency. I'm just also, my creative gears are also just worrying and going like, could I have multiple Millicast instances and somehow pipe my mixer output into more than one Millicast instance at a time?
Yeah, it's all of the above. So you could even send one to, I don't know, YouTube, and then you can send one to like a more private audience that would live in a lower latency world.
So what I'm hearing then is it sounds like it's possible. It looks like the implementation details, they might want to get in touch with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they might want to get in touch with you.
You asked this question, definitely reach out, get in touch with us. We would love to learn more about the use case. Probably we can support it, but we would like to collect, all the requirements and then, help understand what you're trying to do with it. All right, next question coming from Robert. Can the mixer page be hidden, so invisible to all users? A Metaverse app could use it to augment its audio video features in a spatial audio-based conference.
Yeah, so the mixer joins as a special participant, and you don't actually know of the participant unless you're a developer. Like you can see in the participant list that a mixer has joined, but in your application, you don't necessarily have to reflect the fact that you now have a mixer inside of a conference.
Yeah, like when I look at our stats in the background, we've got a tool that's running that shows us what listeners we have tuned in, and in that list is literally a user called Mixer. And it joined just after the recording in progress started.
All right, next question. I'm a current Millicast customer. Will there be any changes on how service works now that Dolby Io owns them?
Not that we know of, no. Yeah, it's business as usual for existing Millicast customers.
Let's see. Next question. How is Dolby Io different from open source Webrtc alternatives? Jason, that one's probably a good question for you.
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, I suspect that this comes down to kind of that buy versus build decision to build your own WebRTC infrastructure based off of open source tools. There's a few things that Dolby Io gives. One, to take the pain out of running that for you, hence it being a platform that you can leverage, but also the audio processing, as was highlighted a couple of times during here, hearing the difference of the audio processing of what the standard processing is versus what we're able to accomplish is a big differentiator in terms of getting improved audio quality. Hope that helps.
If I may just add another, or I guess like add some color to that. I'd say that the big difference is it's a matter of like our mentality towards WebRTC. A lot of vendors today like to take off-the-shelf parts and then slap them together and then build some type of platform. What we like to do here is own more of the technology stack. So, for example, from an audio perspective, we do have a audio mixing server. We have our own client-side libraries that manage our own audio cleanup. And we also have our own audio codecs. So from that perspective, if something does break, we can jump on it and fix it much quicker than, like, for example, waiting around for like a browser to do so. Obviously, there are some cases where we can't fix what the browser does, but yeah, our mentality is to own more of the technology stack so that we can improve the quality and experience for our end users.
All right, and with that, we are officially at time. I would like to thank everyone who joined today. Really appreciated the questions. Thank you so much, Elias, for agreeing to join us and give some background and insights into your decision to work with the Dolby Io team. One last call to action for everyone joining. If you would like to learn more about Dolby Io, please reach out to us. It's dolby.io/contact. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, as well as an email with a survey asking you some questions about future topics you'd like covered, or anything that we presented today that you had any additional questions about. We would love to hear about them. So whether you're in the Pacific time zone, if you're in East Coast time zone, or you are joining us from outside of the Americas, thank you for joining. Have a great morning, afternoon, and evening.